So if I'm
Yeah.
scrolling through Instagram and I see something, like, the only person who's pausing the video for is me. So if I wanna buy it, but if I'm sitting with other people and watching something, I'm not gonna go, "Oh, could y'all just wait while I buy these
That's true.
sunglasses?" Like, it'll only take a few minutes.
So this week on the pod, I have a new husband. I had to, right? So for once, I'm not with Evan Shapiro, my traditional co-host. We're on a break, like Ross and Rachel, just for the both of us to have some nice time off. We've been working hard, and so I had to choose, a new friend for this episode. And honestly, uh, it took me a second. So let me welcome Alan Wolk from TVREV to the Media Odyssey. Welcome, Alan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I have been a big fan of the Media Odyssey since it started. I was pleased that you guys had name checked me once or twice, and because I told you guys I listened to it as podcasts were meant to be listened in the car while I'm driving, so
Good.
or while I'm walking the dog. So
Nice to have you as a listener. But for those who know you, you have an amazing newsletter, TV Rev. You write extensively about advertising, CTV, streaming, you name it. And we have something in common besides, having a really cool
yes,
jean-looking shirt, which we said
yes,
it's never gonna happen with Ivan. Ivan never has a nice shirt, always a t-shirt.
no,
So
yes,
I'm loving this. But we have this other thing in common, that is that we talk and write at length about the TV OS wars. So that's what I
yes.
want to talk about today. Just to get started, the one thing when we were preparing for this, I've been thinking and I felt it's been kind of quiet on the CTV front. Do you feel the same? Is it me?
No, it's definitely like there hasn't been because I write a column called the Week in Review every week, and usually it's sort of obvious what I'm going to write about. There was a big
Yeah.
news story, and then all of a sudden, the last few weeks, it's like, okay, now we're going to tackle some big issues because there's no news that's happened. So I think everybody's just kind of, whether it's the new administration in Washington or just the beginning of the year, there is this sort of like, okay, let's just pause for a minute.
And I think we had a very eventful 2024. And, last but not least, an announcement of a new player coming into that space. And I wrote about it in Streaming Made Easy. And to me, it made no sense. To me, this ecosystem is so fragmented. But so let's pause maybe for a second
Yeah.
on that big news from last year, which is the Trade Desk. First, what's your take on them, coming into that ecosystem, especially, from someone like you who's very acute to advertising and, at technology?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me either, and to be honest, I have yet to meet one person who said like, "Yo, what a great idea." Like,
Yeah.
everybody is equally as baffled by it. In the US market, they seem to sort of I don't the other way I can describe it is they almost thought, "Okay, we're building Firefox, like, we're building another browser, and people can just put it on their TV," and they seem to ignore the fact that, no, you can't. Like, if you have an
Yeah.
LG TV, it comes with the LG OS, and that's it. Like, yes, you can put a Roku stick on, but, like, those are your options. And there's really not much room in the US market. There's some room in Europe. It seems that they forgot that this is a user thing, that they were very focused on advertisers. "I'm gonna make this
Yeah.
great for advertisers," and it's like, right, but you have to get a consumer to actually install it and download it and use it, and you haven't given any reason why you think a consumer would wanna do this. So it
Yeah,
really
that's
didn't
true.
make any sense. The only theory that I heard, and I think people were just kinda grasping at straws, was, like, maybe they're gearing up to try and buy Roku because they wanna say they're in the OS business, and even that was like, I guess if
Mm,
someone held a gun to my head and said, "Come up with a reason," but I didn't really buy it.
yeah, that's an interesting one. I hadn't heard that. I have to say that they went shopping at Roku. Well, not necessarily directly, but a lot of former Roku executive actually joined that secret venture within the trade desk. Folks who were very much present, during the early days of Roku over 10 years ago,
Yeah.
including a few more recent folks. So I think they what they got right is that they knew they had to build the right team to go about this. I think they were a bit optimistic on their ability to have deals with manufacturers, because the one thing they won't be doing is they're not making their own device, right? They're just
Yeah.
making the brain in the device. And so their first client, the rumor, and it was confirmed a bit later on, was Sonos. And what did we hear about Sonos, Alan? What's going on with this thing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're not gonna do an OS. And, like, who is selling so that was the other thing they didn't seem to get is that it's a real volume game.
yeah, yeah.
And, like, yeah, so Sonos sold some TV, so what are they gonna sell, like, 100,000 of them? And, like, like, versus a couple million from everybody else, doesn't really get you anything.
Yeah, and Sonos has its own troubles, and they've actually
Yeah,
decided to scrap that project, right? And
yeah.
one of the things I wrote about was the price point. I think it was in between, said to be between 200 and 400. I mean, there's not a lot of room, but certainly there's not a lot of room for someone who's coming with, a very expensive TV with no prior experience, nor, a very high priced set-top box.
It's baffling. Apple has this weird thing where they cling to the business model that worked for them in the early aughts, which is
Yeah,
somebody else will launch a product and the product will become very popular in the market, but that company will be very engineering driven and make
yeah,
a very unusable, unuser friendly product. And we can come in with something that's really user friendly and grab the whole market, sort of
yeah,
what they did with the iPhone, but doesn't work anymore. Like they introduced what's it called their HomePod up against Alexa, and like well, Alexa's pretty good. Like there's no advantage to it, or even the Google product. There's no to just especially to justify the price point. They did the same thing with the streaming TV with Apple
yeah,
Music. They did the same thing with Apple Music too, where people like Spotify. There's nothing wrong with the UX of Spotify. People like it. They didn't really offer any great improvement. And now the same thing with the TV. Like, it has always baffled me that they never rolled out a lower priced Apple TV device. And especially because this is the company that realized 25 years ago, okay, the iPod is probably a little expensive for some people. We're going to roll out the iPod mini. And then there was an even
yeah.
smaller one, the Shuffle. That's what it was called.
Oh, yeah, I
That was
remember
like
that.
$25 or something. And like they got it back then. It's like, why don't you roll out a stick? Because the I think it was 180 then, now it's $130 now, box is just not 6x better than a Roku stick or an Amazon Fire TV stick. It's, maybe a little better, but like 5%.
Yeah,
But and the same thing with TV. I think they just don't know what to do. I mean, even with their app, right? Apple TV Plus. Like it's got a bunch of hit shows, but there's no library, and it's kind of unclear, like, do you see it as a marketing expense? Is it just like
yeah.
a marketing tool for you? Do you want it to actually be successful? Is it a hobby? They haven't figured it out. And then the last thing is there's that poor guy, Gene Munster. He's a financial analyst who for years would predict that this is the year Apple's gonna roll out the Apple TV. Every year he was wrong, and he made more money than everybody listening to this podcast, I'm sure.
It's actually the first edition I wrote for Streaming Made Easy was called Apple TV, or, the impossible, breakthrough. And I'm absolutely aligned with you. I'm not sure I still understand why they couldn't do it. I think one thing would be that, historically they've been very good at, building and innovating from the ground up. Whereas the TV business, it's very much in the hands of, historically the Korean, now the Chinese, even European have been very good at, making those TVs. And so was it too hard for them to disrupt that existing, ecosystem? They didn't want it enough, or it didn't fit with their agenda of going very premium, very expensive. Yeah, let's see. But you were talking about big tech. And so how do you see Google and, Amazon in this TV OS wars?
So, I mean, I think so they've got different paths. So Amazon is actually already making their own TVs, and Amazon has the whole Fire TV ecosystem and the Amazon Prime ecosystem. So they've got a huge ad play. They're pushing out Amazon TVs in the US and especially in Europe. I think a lot of the OEMs have a fear with them that, okay, well, we'll let them in and then that's it. Like they'll just kind of, it's sort of like The Last of Us. Like they'll just kind of be like that, sort of take over and that's that. And then Google also, I mean, I've heard people say, point blank that, hey, they told all our telecom friends, oh, we're not going to roll out a phone, use our OS, and then they
Mm.
rolled out their own phone and like they like, fool me once, So I think there's sort of a fear with that. Um, then you've got the CE manufacturers, right?
Yeah.
Samsung and LG that are also selling their interface, and I think Vizio is as well. And again, it's that same thing. It's like, yeah, it's good. Yeah, they did all the work, but what's in it for me? And I
Yeah.
think it varies from market to market, depending on how sophisticated the market is as to where people go. And it is an easy solution. And obviously there's people buying it, but I think there's also this kind of fear. And maybe we should look at some of these, the sort of white label third party
Yeah.
companies as well.
Yeah, so I think that's a fascinating ecosystem because everyone wants in on it. Hence why it's so fragmented today. Hence why I think there's no room truly, anymore. And actually, the best path forward for me would be consolidation. But yeah, the 2025, I doubt this will happen. We're not taking the path of a year where people feel good about making deals. We all wonder why. But so if you look at that ecosystem, you have the big tech that we covered, you have the historical, hardware manufacturers, Samsung, LG, etc. And this last portion, it's the indies, right? They like
Right.
to say we're that independent OS, and we've seen actually those are the companies who've made the news the last few years. May that be a TiVo, uh, Foxum becoming Well TV. Who else do we have? We have Titan.
Titan. Yeah.
So these guys are they have different strategies, right? Meaning that besides Whale, who does pure they do brand their TVs, but also have white label offerings. Titan, TiVo, they're very much in the business of doing what Roku did, that is to have a co-branded device, right? So that's going to be a Philips Titan, Sony Titan, TiVo Sharp, etc. So what do they have in your opinion to have a shot, right, running going at this so late for some of these guys, right? Well has been around the block for years with Foxzoom, but a Titan, a TiVo, we're talking 2-3 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they have going is that, they're not Amazon, Google, or another big company. In other words, that if you are a small TV manufacturer and
Yeah.
you don't want to spend money developing your own OS, it's a great solution. It gives you something that's out of the box. The development costs are spread out across a number of, different clients. And they all have their own sort of little, niche. So Titan is very much focused for now on the European market and sort of
Yeah.
saying, hey, we have local knowledge. We'll get that. Wales, as you noted, has been doing it for a while. They've got, everything sort of figured out. And Xperi, which is TiVo, is
Yeah.
also like they've been, my kids always laugh when I say, like, TiVo used to be a verb, like,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna
in the
TiVo
aughts, you
this.
would say, "I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
TiVo it," and, they have a very advanced interface, and they've been doing a lot of stuff recently about advertising and monetization, so that's sort of their play as well, and I think for a lot of these smaller manufacturers, that could be an in. It's like, why are we different than the other guys? We've got this hot OS and not my that's where the innovation is happening, right?
Yeah.
Like, at some level, I don't see Amazon and Google innovating as much as just sort of pushing their own stuff.
Yeah. What I've noticed with these guys, because they're coming in, late to the game, huh, so to say, because we've been
Yeah.
doing TVs for years. Um, they're taking a bit of a shortcut, and I think that's an interesting one in the sense that they're looking at their peers, and from the get go, they have they're positioning their brand very strongly. They're building hubs, content hubs, and not just the apps. They're all going to build fast and able hubs from the get go, understanding right that they want to have more skin in the game than just licensing the OS and then giving it over to the TV manufacturer. Um, what have you seen, within that ecosystem in terms of those companies making those content plays, right? So what's your number one? Why do they do this besides what I've just said? But and what have you seen that is new, exciting in that space from these guys, from the TVOS guys, or you can, yeah, even a manufacturer, an LG and a Samsung would be
Yeah, I
a
mean, I
good,
think that, for the LGs, for the manufacturers, what they're doing is easy in that it's a way to bring down the cost of the TV, right?
yeah,
So the margins on a TV set are very, very slim. So Roku had sort of come up with the ideas of, oh, you can have a second revenue stream that's going to
yeah,
make Wall Street, it's actually going to confuse the hell out of Wall Street because they never quite got like, wait, they have advertising and
yeah,
they sell a device, but with an LG, Samsung, Vizio, all the different so many different companies have, Vida
yeah,
is, Hisense. It's an alternate revenue stream that helps bring down the cost of the TV, and it's something that is very much desired by the different, media companies. So if you're Netflix, if you're Warner Brothers, and you can promote, you can pay LG to promote your shows on their home screen, that's a win if you can have a little ad display, even a display ad and things like that. So that's a win. And then for their fast services, it's a way to create stickiness.
yeah,
And again, it's a way, get them in the ad game, use their data. They all have a lot of ACR data, so that's sort of their thing. I mean, Amazon's its own thing. I mean, so
yeah,
just to I'm sure most of you know this just because it's happened to you, but around this time last year, Amazon sort of did this little sleight of hand. It's like, okay, everybody's now on the
yeah,
ad-supported version. If you want the ad-free, you've got to pay more. And I think a lot of people were like, well, the only thing I watch on here is sports, so which has ads anyway, so I'll just
yeah,
stick with the ad-free. They had a very, very low ad load, and they still sort of do. But, Amazon knows everything. The joke is always like, Google knows who you wanna be, Amazon knows who you really are, right? So
yeah,
Google knows what you're searching for, but Amazon knows exactly what you buy, and so the amount of data they have is pretty incredible. And I think for everybody, the notion of fast, is, for consumers is a big thing. It's like, "Hey, I wanna turn on the TV and just have something to watch."
yeah.
It's not that lean in, it's that lean back. I'm making dinner. I just want to watch, have some noise in the background. If you can say, hey, here's a pretty well done free service, and especially if you're outside the US, a free service in your language, even better. So,
And one reason why I think a lot of these guys are launching their own hubs is for most of them, one of the biggest app on the platform is YouTube.
yeah,
And YouTube is a bit of a free rider, right? I mean, it's not like they're very generous with their partners when it comes to distribution. And that means that you have a big portion of that time spent that you can't really monetize. It's being monetized by YouTube. And so I saw that kind of firsthand when I was at Roku. That's when, we started, building up and beefing up the Roku channel. And it now is, I think, a top three app, within the Roku
yeah,
ecosystem. And so when you have Netflix number one or two, YouTube again number one and two, and you're number three, you were in a really good spot. So that's where I don't understand why Wall Street does not get that. I think if Roku did not have that business, they wouldn't have much to show for, right? If you look at their earnings report, this is where the money is coming from, the platform revenues. Um, so anything else is catching your attention? Like, there's a promise on CTV that it's, targeted, personalized, contextual, that it is amazing. Is it truly delivering on that promise, in your opinion?
I mean, it's starting to there's still a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems with the data, right?
Yeah,
So, in other words, it's not so much from the TV guy, OEM side, but from the brand side that they don't have great data
yeah.
for, for their audiences. A lot of them relying on first party data sets that are out of date. There's a company called TruthSet that has sort of analyzed them and found that, maybe 30% of the people are still living where they're supposed to be living or fall into the category that they're supposed to fall into. Some of it is based on things like loyalty programs that are several years out of date or things people just signed up for one time. So that's been really tough. We're starting to see a number of other plays come in though that might make this better. So whether it's contextual
Yeah.
targeting or emotional engagement. There's a company called MediaProbe that measures that. But I'll give a little plug. TVREV just did a big report on contextual targeting and
Cool.
how that works. And contextual is everything from the genre to what's happening on the screen to the emotion of the scene. There's a funny scene, you have a funny ad, you want to put a funny, it in a comedy scene. So all of that stuff I think is gonna make it a little bit easier and a little bit, and make the ad experience better. But right now, the biggest thing holding it back is, the data and then also the measurement problem that
Yeah,
there's no easy way to measure from platform to platform. There's a lot of grading our own homework. There's also a lot of gaps, like, I just wrote about this the other day that, like, yeah, White Lotus has been, doing having the best ratings ever, but their ratings are still nothing compared to a lot of the shows
yeah,
on linear, and the difference is that on linear, all those viewers are ad supported, whereas on Max, I would guess maybe 20%,
yeah.
25% of the people watching the White Lotus are seeing ads, and everybody else is on ad free. So you still have a lot of ad-free viewing on streaming, and they kinda have to figure that out, that,
Yeah.
the faster not get yeah, faster get are good for extending reach, but not for getting that initial reach.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, we did an episode on measurement a few weeks back, and I think there's a challenge in number one, kind of agreeing right on key definition across the industry, then choosing uh, one, two, the right three companies who can kind of become this source of truth across the board. And honestly, if there's one thing where I can't follow, it's the amount of partnerships, between a Roku and a video amp and all of these guys. I feel like there's always something new within that ecosystem, a new partnership.
Yeah.
And from a distance, I'm not a buyer, right? That I feel it's getting more complicated by the day. So there's a question also: is it easy to buy CTV inventory from, what people are telling you?
No, it's not. I mean, that's their problem is that, it used to be. I mean, especially if you compare it to sort of, where linear was. That linear was just like you made a chart, you bought, then, network and cable and
Yeah,
broadcast, and it was very, very easy. It was the sort of thing an AI could do. An AI could buy 90s TV, 90s linear
yeah,
TV, like, pretty easily. So now they've got all these different services. They're all measured differently. They're all using different, there's currency is even a term that, like, what is, different people have different meanings for
yeah,
it. Then then throw in, YouTube, which is a whole other ball of wax that Google keeps, like, raising their hand and going, "No, YouTube, we're actually TV. See how many people watch it on TV?" And the
yeah,
buyers are like, "But skip ads, skip ads. Like,
yeah,
how do we measure that? What do we
yeah,
do?" And so it's all over it's really sort of a mess. And that's what they need to figure out is just an easy, simple way. And they've been working on this seemingly forever. And a lot of it, and I harp on this a lot, is they don't cooperate with each other. They
yeah,
all think they're going to win. They all think I'm going to
yeah,
be the company that wins. And they don't realize that, your enemies are not the other media companies. It's Google, it's Amazon,
yeah,
it's Meta, Microsoft. It's not, it's not Paramount is not the enemy of Comcast. Just, yeah, you compete in some level, but if you all Disney, Warner, if you all kind of like work together, you could actually have something and take those guys on because that's their sweet spot is they know content and
yeah.
they how to make good shows.
But how about universal ads, which was announced at CES, right? Isn't it an attempt to, make it easier amongst peers? To your point, I think Roku's part of this, maybe Disney and others.
Yeah, it's a start. It's just, not everybody is on board yet, and it's
Yeah,
still
as
unclear
always.
how it's
Yeah.
all gonna work and, and all that. I mean, that's the problem with all of it. They all keep basically reinventing the wheel. There's a bunch of industry councils, there's OpenAP, there's a
Yeah.
JIC, but, it's just like come together. Like, not
Yeah.
everybody belongs to the JIC and, and all that, and that's really what it's gonna be. And, there's a thought that sort of in the way that, 30 years ago with digital, some big companies like Procter& and Gamble, I think, and I forget who else, sort of said, "Okay, if you guys want us to run ads, then you need to come up
Yeah.
with standards and make it, standard banner sizes, how you're
Yeah.
measuring them, and then we'll buy ads from you."
Interesting.
There's a thought that at some point that's gonna have to happen again too, like, just a bunch of big companies can go, "Okay, you need to pick a
Okay.
measurement
Yeah.
and how long, what's a view, and then give that to us, and we don't really care how you do it, but just pick something."
Yeah, interesting. So would be coming from the buyer
Yeah.
themselves. Interesting. One thing that was very, hot last year was shoppable TV. Where are we at? I feel like I'm not hearing much about it. Any cool things being developed? Any initial results? I'm thinking, this year maybe we're gonna see Visio Walmart coming as one. So what's cooking in that space?
I mean, I think it's a slow process. I mean, I think it's with everything in this industry takes longer than you think it
Yeah.
would. But I think that shoppable is the sort of thing that you need to slowly bring people into it. It's not going to be the sort of thing that they start. The other thing I think a lot of the I think that the media companies haven't been thinking through is this notion that TV is not a solo activity. So if I'm
Yeah.
scrolling through Instagram and I see something, like, the only person who I'm pausing the video for is me. So if I wanna buy it, but if I'm sitting with other people and watching something, I'm not gonna go, "Oh, could y'all just wait while I buy these
That's true.
sunglasses? Like, it'll
Yeah.
only take a few minutes." So I think there's a lot, that needs to be figured out, and I think it's as basic as just having an app, some sort of app on the TV, on the OS, where you can sort of, like, click buy later
Yeah.
or whatever, and that kind of thing. And then just getting people used to it. It's a behavior that's gonna take some time to sort of develop. I mean, we're seeing, companies like Curve are doing some innovative stuff where they're able to sort of match their catalog. But yeah, it's gonna, take a while. The other piece too, and I know that, say, LG has announced, for instance, that they're gonna have something similar to an app, like basically an LG Wallet. I forget what exactly they're calling it, but basically,
Okay.
if I wanna buy something off of my LG TV, my data will, my info will be stored in there, and I don't have to sort of re-enter my credit card, my shipping address every time.
I would say about time, right? Because if
Yeah.
you think of it, the TV OS guys, and for those listening to us, the difference being, it's that software layer. Those guys came in right away with a payment solution. May that be Roku Pay, Google Pay, Amazon, etc. And two things. That data is first party data, and this is actionable data and very valuable data that you get about people using your TVs. Number two, it's making the process of consuming content, may that be buying something transactional, getting a subscription, pay-per-view, whatever, and later
Wow.
shoppable, much easier, right? And right now I feel like the legacy or the historical TV manufacturers, they were more focused on hardware, less on software, and therefore they have millions of TVs
Yes.
without an account, without payment details, without all of this. So I think it's fascinating. It's great that LG is putting some effort into that. The team came on the pod and they spoke to that. Uh, they were amongst the one who were the most pushy about shoppable. Actually, Samsung has been
Yes.
pretty quiet on this. So let's see what comes out of that. Um, okay, so we're coming to an end. We were saying it at the top when we were prepping, we're about to go traveling the world for, events, etc. Is there anything that you're, expecting to come out within the CTV landscape in the next few months? Anything you've been privy to, under the anything you want to share about what's going to happen in the next few months, or are we going to be more in, quiet time, people are head down getting stuff done?
So I'm very curious to see what Possible is gonna be about, the Possible show in Miami, because suddenly it seems to have just blown up this year, and I'm curious if any announcements are gonna happen about that, or if it's just gonna be a lot of people in Miami going, "God, it's
Yeah,
nice to be in the warm weather." And then what happens during the upfronts? Because there's all the let's be real, there's all this uncertainty
yeah,
in the world since last week, and, how does that impact the upfronts? What are people thinking? How does it all of these companies are international, so how does it impact the industry, this whole
yeah.
tariff thing? And, that's really the thing that I'm kinda keeping my eyes on
Yeah.
over the next couple months, so
I'm thinking for the upfront, super keen to see what comes out of Amazon because, as you were saying, they will be, a year in their, ad supported venture. So it's gonna be interesting to see if they have anything interesting, any new formats, etc. And a bit of data to for us to chew on. And I think those who will be noisy about CTV advertising, it's YouTube.
yes, yeah, very much. They're gonna because that's been the whole thing is, they wanna push YouTube is TV,
Yeah,
and it's not for you and me or it's like, okay, media buyers, think of us as TV, put us
yeah,
in your TV plans,
yeah,
brands, put us in your TV plans, and the TV's pushing back and all. I also suspect we'll hear a lot about this at the Stream TV show
yeah.
in Denver, where we will both be in June.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. Do you wanna
Yes.
share? Because I think you have a specific CTV event happening, during
Yes, we have
CTV, is that
something the
correct?
first day called it kicks off the show, it's called The Future of Streamonomics. It's
Cool.
a 2.5 hours of programming about actually a lot of the topics we discussed today. We're gonna be going over contextual, fast, local TV, and everything that's going on. It's almost sort of like if you go to this and you go to the rest of the show, you're like, "Okay, this should have primed me for the rest
Yeah,
of the show."
I'm up to speed. Okay, cool, I'll be there, count me in.
Very
Awesome.
good.
Well, Alan, thank you so much. It's been amazing. Very much of a
Yes.
discussion on the topic we both love. You're gonna have to come back. Maybe next time you can come back and have a chat with Evan, or we'll have
Okay.
a chat the three of
Sure.
us.
Well, the 3 of
But
us,
yeah,
yeah, open up the relationship there, so
yeah, yeah, absolutely love it. So, guys, you're gonna see this episode in a few weeks' time. We're gonna push it on TVREV. TVREV can be found at tvrev.com on
yes.
LinkedIn.
Yes,
Cool.
and either or under me on LinkedIn, we push it everywhere.
Cool. And my newsletter is Streaming Made Easy. I'll be pushing this episode as well. Thank you, everyone, for being with us this week. Tell us, how much you loved having Marion and Alan instead of Marion
Yes.
and Evan. A good change. Vote for us. Vote Alan.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, actually, I won't shave my
No,
hair.
no, that's
No,
not
no,
going to work.
no, no,
Unfortunately,
no.
even I cannot make it work. I don't know how he does it. But
Yes.
Alan, thank you so much for everything.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Cheers.